You're listening to the Hawke Media podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping entrepreneurs and executives crush the digital marketing game. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. Let's get into the show.
You're listening to HawkeTalk. I'm here today with Dan Caldwell. How you doing, man?
Good, brother. How you doing?
Good. Good to have you on.
Yeah.
So
good to be on.
Yeah, always like to start. So, trying to think that did you come out of the womb, like love the fight scene, gonna make the first apparel line? Like I like to take it back. Like let's from the top. Where were you born? Where are you from? How did it all start?
No, I mean, I think I always had kind of the entrepreneurial bug. I used to charge my friends. I'd throw a circus inside my garage and charge my friends money to come play games. And I did a magic show. I can remember doing a magic show where I went around, sold tickets to it. And sorry, the little one's not feeling good.
We're all working from home. I get it. It's okay.
And Mom, can you grab her? And sorry, I'm not sure if you can edit that, but
yeah, we can edit it. No worries.
And then in junior high, I started a DJ company and started DJing all the schools in the area, all the junior highs, all the high schools.
And where was this? Where were you from?
So I grew up in San Bernardino, which is like
cool.
About an hour outside of LA, not too far.
Yep.
And, but we grew up in a really bad neighborhood. So I had a really good family upbringing, but we just lived in a bad place. And,
got it.
But we never felt like we were in danger and trouble, but we've been in shootouts in front of our house, and my mom's been mugged in front of our house, and all our cars have been stolen. Our house has been broken into multiple times. So it was kind of just a normal occurrence, just what happened. But I didn't think too much of it. And then coming out of high school, I actually wanted to be a police officer. So I kind of started down that route. And
so I'm curious, like, just to take a step back and on the beginning of that, like, how were your parents influential in like all of this, like the circus, the DJing, like where do you think that came from?
I'm not sure. I think part of that was girls. I was like, we were in junior high. I remember seeing this group called Randy and Andy come in, and they were DJs. They were a little bit older, high school guys. And I just remember everybody giving them attention, it was like they were rock stars.
Yep.
And so we were just trying to think, how could we do that? And so one day we went to this small school, this little prep school. And my parents waited for like 3 days to get me into this school. They had to sleep on the streets, like to literally get me in the school. And I ended up getting kicked out in 8th grade. but it was they tried, and they were.
And what got you kicked? I gotta ask, what got you kicked out?
Oh, it was not. I mean, I don't know. I think. Well, what happened was I gave one of the teachers the bird, but I didn't even know what it was at the time. Like, I don't think I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I did it because I saw some friends do it.
Yeah.
And when she got mad at me when she turned around, I flipped her the bird, and then it turned out I didn't know what I did, but somebody saw me. So
So you got expelled for flipping your teacher the bird.
Yeah.
I used the words to my teacher when I was in high school, and I got sent to the principal's office, but I did not get kicked out.
Yeah. Well, this is like a prep school. It was like, it was at will school. So if they didn't like you, they had like a demerit system, and they basically demerited me right out because I already had like 20 or 30 years for something else. And so it just put me over the top.
Yeah.
But it was a small little school, but they didn't have the money to pay for a DJ. So in one of the morning announcements, they asked if anybody knew any DJs that could do a school dance.
Yep.
And we were like, we could do it. And we didn't have any DJ equipment or anything. We didn't have anything. We didn't know what a DJ did really, but we just assembled my parents' turntable and my friends' so they weren't like real turntables like everybody else. Everybody's using Technic 1200s, and we're using like these big wooden case turntables that we had hooked up to my friend's amplifier, and we went out and bought a bunch of albums. And actually, for our first one, we made a tape of the whole thing because we didn't think we could actually do all the mixing good.
Yeah.
So we just made a tape and we played like we were DJing the whole time, but we really
so basically what happened. Yeah, what half of DJs do these days. You hit play and dance a lot.
Yep, heads are up a lot. Yeah. Talking to girls over here, you know, it was fun. And so once we realized that we were getting all this attention, we were like, we got to keep doing this. Yeah. So all through high school, we just kept buying equipment. We ended up having a really good equipment. We had the best lighting systems in the area, smoke systems and big, huge lighting system and crazy speakers, stacked speaker system. So we were probably the most equipped company in the place. And so we were getting all the dances.
I was gonna say, so you did the school dance, you kind of scrappily threw it together, but then you started getting other paid gigs. That's how that built out?
Right. We just, you know, I was making $100 an hour for any dance, and we get a little, I think we got 30 minutes to set up and 30 minutes to break down. So if it was a 2-hour dance, you had a 3-hour, you know, you were making $300.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And so how long did you do that for? How long did you do
we got rid of our stuff in high school. Or right after high school. So I kind of got out of it after high school. I decided I wanted to be a police officer at that point. So
yeah. So tell me about that. What made you want to be a police officer?
I took an elective class, and I didn't know until I took this side teacher was teaching the class, and they talked about the coolest stuff, chasing bad guys in cars and foot pursuits and all kinds of cool stuff. I just said, I want to learn how to do that. So they actually said something about the Explorer system, you know, like you could go be a police explorer. So I went and signed up like that week and became this explorer. And I'm driving around with police cars, and we're in vehicle pursuits and chasing bad guys. And I'm like, you signed me up for this. So I signed up, and next thing I know, you know, I'm a police officer.
And so how long were you officer out in San Bernardino still, right?
Right. Yeah. So I was there for about 7 years. And actually what happened was right out of high school, I got hired as a security guard for a high school. Okay. And the guy who was showing me the ropes happened to be my partner in TapOut. So we met each other there. He was showing me the ropes. He's like 10 years older than I was. And so I learned all the ropes from him, and we just became best friends during that time. And we just started talking all the time. We were training. He was coming from Taekwondo. I had trained in Taekwondo and boxing. So I was kind of showing him some boxing stuff, and he was showing me some kicks. And it was just, we just had a good time. We enjoyed being around each other. And
were you on the boxing side from a young age, or when did you start getting into?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't great or anything. I just had taken boxing when I was growing up. So I knew just enough to get me in trouble. You know, it wasn't like if I stepped in the ring with any real boxer, I was going to get smashed, but I knew how to, you know, I knew hands and knew a little bit about, you know, footwork. And so I was showing him some footwork stuff. He was showing me some footwork stuff. And then we just practiced I had a heavy bag at my house. Yeah. So he would come over to my house, and I was living with somebody. I was living with a police officer actually. And he was showing me all the heavy bag, or he was showing me his kicks, and I would show him some hands, and it was just a good trade-off.
Nice. And so how long was that? The period before you joined the police force was when you were a security guard?
Yes. Yeah. So we were security guards, and I just talked to him. I was like, hey, what do you think about being a police officer? I'm thinking I want to go, you know, try out and apply for law enforcement. I wasn't old enough yet at the time. And because I was only 19, you had to be 21. So to go through, you had to finish the academy when you were 21. So you had to at least be 21. So I was waiting a little bit, but I told him that, and he said, yeah, it sounds like that might be kind of cool. And we were kind of like a team. So we'd go bust all these guys, you know, we were pulling guns off people and all kinds, you know, taggers and all kinds of stuff, you know, and it was just fun. It was just dealing with a bunch of kids. And the truth is, in San Bernardino, those kids are gangbangers, you know, and so a lot of them were in gangs. And so it was dangerous. It was dangerous stuff. We're walking around with just pepper spray on us and having to deal with these guys with guns. And so we got into, you know, some wrestling matches over guns and knives, and when guys were fighting, you know, trying to pull those guys down. It was interesting, and it was fun.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
it
that
led us
prepped
to
you.
being a police officer.
I would say you get into the police academy and get into, serving as an officer. You've already got a ton of that experience. That's interesting. Probably is that usual that people are coming in with that?
Yeah, not really. I mean, unless they were like the reserves, so there were a lot of reserves that would eventually be police officers.
Got it.
So they would be a reserve police officer, and then they would apply for full-time.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you did that for 7 years, like just kept your head down. And what were you doing as a police officer? Like what kind of position were you stationed in?
No, I was on patrol, and so
Okay.
I was patrolling the area and in my city, and getting into doing a bunch of arrests, making the paper, lots of pursuits, and I was a busy guy. I was trying to stay busy. I was the one guy that would we had a small SWAT team, so whenever they needed a uniformed officer for that SWAT team, they'd always pick me because I was hungry. I was out there chasing stuff. I was very proactive, and so I was friends with most of the good guys, the active guys, the guys that stayed busy.
Yeah. And did you I'm curious, why not go SWAT or any of that? Like, did you just
I would have gone farther. Yeah. But what happened? So what kind of gave me the sour taste for law enforcement is when I started, it was fun and I was enjoying it. But as you start to kind of get into it, get comfortable, you start to realize that, you get into it to do good, and you start to realize it gets a little sideways. There's my wife.
Doing a great job.
She was going to jump in here. And so, you get into it to do good with people and try to help people. I hated bullies in high school, and, I got bullied. So I hated bullies and wanted to fix those things, wanted to help the people who couldn't help themselves. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, sometimes law enforcement isn't about all that. And it feels like there's a lot of gray space, I should say. And, there's people that are doing things, they're trying to do good, and maybe they got tickets and their license is suspended, and now you got to tow their car when you pull them over. And now because they lose their car, they're going to lose their job. And because they lose their job, they're going to lose their house, and they're going to lose their family. And so you're doing things that you're like, you wish you had more choices. You wish you could control it and do better for people. And sometimes it just doesn't always feel like that.
Yeah, got it. And so did you end up just walking away from it out of that frustration? Like what happened?
Yeah, no. So, I got sideways, and I ended up on the wrong side of the game. And it was very political city, and they forced out the mayor and forced out the captain, and these two sides kind of took sides. Well, I was on the wrong side of that fence when that happened. Yeah. And so they started coming down on me, and they ended up kind of threatening me. So I quit and got out of it. And I was trying to go get a job at another police department. It was having a lot of problems because of that situation, because I had gone through some stuff with them. And then I finally got hired on a police department that I didn't want to be at. And I just said, so my eyes are out now. Now I'm thinking I'm going back to being an entrepreneur. I'm thinking like that again. I'm kind of looking for something. And about that time, well, before that time, actually, we started training with the Gracies, who right after the first UFC. And so I was still training with them at the time. And my partner came to me when I was working at that other police department. And he said, "Hey, do you want to start a t-shirt company?" And I was like, "Really? Like a t-shirt company, like, based around mixed martial arts and jujitsu?" And so we started talking it out, and it was just every day he would come over and we would talk it out, because it was kind of a slow paced job. It was at a college, so it was a college police department.
Okay.
And so we would just talk through it. He'd come sit at my, office, and we just talk about it the whole time. And pretty soon I just said, okay, let's do that. And eventually we started this company small. And
so what did the start look like? Did you have a couple designs, ordered some shirts, printed it, and started out of the trunk kind of thing?
Yeah, we were selling at small events, and we'd throw a table down and throw some shirts up on the table and just sell at those events. eventually I became, once we saw that worked, I started flying all over the country selling at these different events, because it became kind of a way for us to infiltrate different area hot zones that mixed martial arts was hot.
And with the events, was it mostly like MMA matches, that kind of thing?
MMA and UFC and jiu-jitsu. So anytime there was jiu-jitsu tournaments, not all of them, but we were trying to mostly do MMA events. But back then it was called No Holds Barred, or NHB. It was before they picked up the MMA term. That was more of a sports term. So we used No Holds Barred. And so all these events were popping up all over the country, and I would throw all my clothes in a bin, throw 2 banners on top, and fly out to this event. I'd pay them like $400 for the table, $500, $600 for the table, and sell our clothes there. And we'd make just enough money usually to buy more clothes and grow a little bit. And it just kept working out. It was a way for us to really get out there. We called it throwing hand grenades. I had a hand grenade on my hand. Nice. We called it throwing hand grenades because that was our way of marketing, getting clothes in different areas. I was flying to Hawaii, and I'd fly to Indiana. I'd fly back, and we'd drive to Phoenix for another show. And then we were just all over the place. Yeah.
And so was it, I mean, as you said, you were still like, it was getting enough to get by, so to speak, and order more clothes. But did you feel like it was an immediate, like, this is going to be something big, or like the first batch of clothes you ordered, your first run, did it go well, or was there a little friction? I'm curious. I'm always curious how it starts too.
Well, it was, it's really hard when you're growing. People don't understand some of this when you're growing. And I didn't understand at the time, for sure, that we're buying inventory. And as you start to create more SKUs, and as you're growing, we were growing 300%. I think I can literally remember our first year we made $29,000. Mm-hmm. That was actually our second year. Our first year we were kind of off books, but our second year we made $29,000. Yeah. Then we made 100,000, and then we made 300,000, and then we made 900,000. So it was like
tripling.
Yeah, I mean, we were doing like that 300% growth every year. And when you're growing that fast, all your money has to go back into inventory. And so you don't understand why you don't have money. Yeah. Because you're like, why are we making $900,000 a year, which was more money I'd ever made in my life. Yeah. And I'm not even close. And I don't have a penny, not even a penny. I can't even pay my rent. Yeah. And I'm driving $1,000 van back and forth from LA to San Bernardino. Yeah. And not even enough money to put gas in my tank. Yeah. And it was because we had so much money tied up in inventory. Right. And, eventually we got a small warehouse. We had cost of the warehouse and cost of advertising and selling at these events and driving in gas and driving to Vegas and making flyers. And it was just, it's always you have so much money outgoing. Yeah. That there's no money in your pocket. And so we had to figure that out.
How were you able to get by with that? Like, what were you just made it work? Like, it was paper thin, but
made it work. Yeah. I mean, we just realized we just had to make more money. And the small margins that you do have, like let's say whatever it is, 2% or whatever that small margin is, as you get bigger, that becomes 3%. That's 5%, eventually it just gets bigger too. Yeah. So we did eventually have a little extra money. And I can remember a few years into it, four years into it, we were finally able to like, okay, I'll pay your rent and my rent, and then we'll like have an extra $500, that we were just paying each other's rents and put an extra $500 in our pocket. But I was still working.
Just to clarify, 4 years into business, you finally could pay yourself $500 on top of rent.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, and so you were still working.
I was still working about about 4 years into it. I quit.
Still as a police officer at the college?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Got it.
Yeah. So I got a second job too. So I was working at a casino as a police officer too. One of the tribal police officers that they have there.
And I think that's super important. I get calls all the time, and I'm sure you do too, about like, everybody gives this advice of like, you just got to leap, you got to go for it. And it's like, you can also make it happen while you have a day job and grow it until it really makes sense to take that leap. But a lot of people think like they have an idea and they have to quit their job to build it. And it's like, no, you can get used to working really, really, really hard. Cause I'm sure like once you're able to quit, now you have all this time, you're able to just skyrocket it, assuming where it went. So
yeah. My friend, my partner actually quit about a year into it. He was having some problems with some situations that he had got into, and he was pretty hands-on. And so sometimes you deal with guys. He was working in the jails, and so he ended up getting in some situations. And one day he calls me and he goes, "Yeah, they called me in the office and started drilling down on me about some situation, about some guy who spit in my face, and I took care of him. And so I threw my badge on the table and said, 'Have a nice life,' and took off." So he's like, "You have to support the business now." I was like, I thought I was going to quit soon. He's like, "No, brother, you have to stay working."
Wow.
So I stayed working. And I was using basically my paycheck to pay for fighters. So like guys we were sponsoring, like $3,000, $5,000, $1,000. It's usually 300, 500, and 1,000. That was a bit like the numbers we usually paid. Sometimes 800 or whatever, but we usually paying fighters about that. And so I was having to use my paycheck to be able to pay those guys. So I can remember guys that we had to drag out like a year to actually pay them because we couldn't pay them all up. And we took these guys. Our first fighters in the UFC cost us $2,500. And it was because one was fighting for a title, Pat Miletich, and Jeremy Horn was fighting too. So we had to, I think I pulled some off a credit card, and then like $500 off a credit card. And then the 2,000 I literally paid over like a year or two.
Got it. And so when you ended up quitting, am I right in terms of what I was saying? Like you got out of it after 4 years, you went, "This is something full-time." Is that about the time you said you were able to pay yourself $500 and you're like, "That's it, I'm done. Like I'm going to full bore with this"? Or like what triggered that big leap, so to speak?
The quit. I think it was just, it was time. One of the things that happened was because I was a police officer, because I've been a real patrol police officer before, I was working outside in the casino. Mm-hmm. And I think I got on some guy a little bit and I kind of got in trouble. They didn't like it. I think I ended up getting in a fight with this guy who, I can't remember what happened exactly, but they ended up bringing me inside. They were trying to bring me inside. And I was like, "I'm not going in that casino for one day." And that day I quit. I just never showed up. I was like, I called them and said, "I'm not going in that casino." It was so smoky, and I just didn't like the whole idea. That's
literally where my head went. It's the smokiness of a casino. No, you don't want to live in that.
Yep. So as soon as they said, "You have to go in the casino," I'm like, "Nah."
So I'm curious, like those 4 years, you're taking all of your job income, your day job income, and putting it into this, putting it into fighters. It's not necessarily making the returns yet because it's all being reinvested. So you're not seeing any money. You're just losing money on this thing in some senses. Like, did you have a vision that this was going to be big and you felt confidence, or were you just passionate about, like, where did that like conviction come from?
Yeah, I think sometimes when you're really onto something, and I've only had that a few times in my life, but when you're really onto something, you just feel it in your gut. Like, this is going to be big. Like, I know it. I feel it in my bones. People don't know it yet, but I know it. I know this is going to be huge. And we used to explain it to, like, imagine fighting at that time, it was watching the UFC. People had never seen anything like this before.
Right.
And I just think we're naturally attracted to it. Mm-hmm. It's something that, like, if you're at your favorite concert and you're watching whoever that is on the stage, and then some girl's over here taking her clothes off or whatever, and then a fight breaks out to your left, everybody's going to the fight. I don't care what else is going on around there.
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah.
It's just like everybody, and that we used to use that analogy all the time. We'd talk to people like that, when investors or whoever it might be, and they were like, "Wow, where would you even think of something like that?"
But it's fair.
But to us, it was true. It was like, this is going to be huge. It's going to be the biggest thing on the planet. Yeah. And you guys just don't see it yet. But I'm telling you, like, no one's ever seen anything like this. Everybody we showed it to, they were just super excited about watching it again or becoming part of it. Yeah. Even the jiu-jitsu, everybody I'd ever introduced, I can remember introducing several friends to jiu-jitsu, and they all of a sudden they're like training full time. You know, it's like everybody wanted to train in it. Once you train in it, you didn't want to stop. It became their life. And so I think with just those two things, we just thought this is a culture now. This is going to be, you know, it's going to be a mainstay and it's going to be a part of our culture in the United States or maybe all over the world.
Yeah.
So we're betting on that.
Got it. Makes sense. And
then some billionaires bought it in 2001, and that really gave us the gas.
And I was to say, what was the time frame pre-Twitter? Like, what year did you start it?
So we started in 97.
Okay. So so it was literally like right after you quit your job.
97, 98, and then 99, we went on books. So 99 is our first year that we actually on books.
And when you quit to go in full time, what year was that?
2002 or 3.
Oh, so you had investors by the time you were ready to do it.
No, we didn't. We never took on investors until 2006.
Oh, I thought you said 2001.
No. Oh, no. They bought the UFC.
Got it.
A couple billionaires bought the UFC in 2001, which was Dana White and his partners.
The Fertittas, right?
The Fertittas.
Yeah.
And when they bought it, we just knew it was game over. I mean, the first day they bought it, you know, first of all, we were friends with the previous UFC owners, and we were kind of getting some stuff.
Was that the Gracies?
No.
Okay.
So, well, the Gracies originally started, Horion and Art Davie started it back in 93.
Got it.
Then Bob Merowitz bought it from them when it was having some problems. It just wasn't getting on television. They were having problems legally. And Bob Merowitz, who'd had a television career in the past, had been that person for TV, thought he could do something with it. And so he thought he could get on television. He ended up having a hard go at it. He was having an uphill battle the whole time. And when Dana White heard that the guy might want to sell it, he talked to the Fertittas, and they came in 2001 with a $2 million offer and bought the UFC.
Not bad, because what did it sell to WME for? $3 billion?
Yeah. 3 or 4 billion. Yeah.
Yeah, not a bad return.
No. A nice return for sure.
Yeah. So you that happens a year later. You quit to start going full time into this as it's taking off.
Yeah.
One quick question: where did the designs come from? Like, where did you get?
We just hired artists. We were not shirt guys. To this day, if you put me in a print shop, I couldn't print a shirt for you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know where to start. We've never printed a shirt in our lives. That's not what we were. We were marketers.
Yeah.
We kind of got a feel for marketing and what it took to market.
Yeah.
And that's what became exciting to us, is just we were just relentless. We would find we were very, I think out of necessity, just became savvy marketers.
Yep.
Trying to make every penny work. You know, it's like we'd pay some guy $300 to wear it in the UFC. And so instead of putting a little logo like some people would, we can. So you remember this like insurgence of giant logos?
Yeah.
I gotta believe we came up with that because I mean, it came out of necessity for us. It was like, we want people to see our logo when they're walking into the UFC. So we started making our logos this big, the entire size of the shirt. And so a logo that you might've stuck on the back at that time, we put on the front because we knew that's what you would see as they were walking in. And so that's the shirt that we started giving to all our fighters. Well, we weren't selling that shirt online. The online shirt had a little tiny logo like this. Well, everybody started asking for this big logo. Yeah. So we started making those shirts and selling them to people. And the next thing I know, that kind of took off, that whole large logo.
That's awesome. And it is just as simple as listening to your customer. They start asking, it's like, yep, sure, we can do that.
Yep. They wanted what they saw the fighters wearing. And we knew that they would want to emulate the fighters. So, it's like with anything. That's with, social media marketing today. If you have, these micro influencers or large influencers, whatever it is, they have an audience that's watching them and they want to be them. And so, or they want to do what they're doing. So when they're, whatever they're doing, representing the food that they drink, the makeup that they use, whatever that is, they're being, their audience are being influenced by that. And the same thing we knew with this, they wanted to be the fighters, and we knew that those shirts would sell.
Yep. Oh, makes sense. And so
popped in here.
Yeah. Well, so so you end up building it. So give me the time frame, 2002 to 2006. Like you're now full-time growing this thing. Like, what was that like? I would love to hear more about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was growing end over end 300% a year. We were traveling
So
all
that
over the
continued.
place.
It went to 900 grand and then kept going 300%.
Yep.
Oh.
And in 2006, the Ultimate Fighter came, and it kind of just changed the landscape for us. We still had no money at that time. I remember jumping in a van when Charles called me one day and said, "Hey, they're about to film the Ultimate Fighter in Vegas." Chuck just called me and said he's one of the coaches on it, and we'd heard rumblings about this television show coming, and so we drove out there that night, and with a bunch of clothes, with our whole van full of clothes, all these clothes and different sizes and everything that we had put together real fast, and we started sleeping on Chuck Liddell's couch inside of his apartment that they had given him to live in.
Did you just know Chuck from being in that scene?
He was one of our fighters at the time.
Yeah, got it.
So we were sponsoring him in the UFC.
Yeah.
And this funny thing is he wouldn't take our money. Like he knew we were like struggling, Yeah. And we would pay him. I think we were paying him about $2,000 or something like that. $1,000, maybe $1,000. And he wouldn't cash our check. Yeah. That's how cool a dude he is. He wouldn't even cash our check. But
that's awesome.
So he told us when the show was starting, and we would go there and sleep on his couch. We'd wash his clothes for him in exchange for letting us sleep there. But we'd only wash his TapOut stuff. So he'd have all this TapOut gear ready to wear every day. And then in the middle of the night, we'd go to the place where we knew they were filming, and we would stuff our shirts inside of the little mail slot that they had. You know how those doors at those offices where they have a little mail slot in them. Yep. And we'd stuff one shirt and then have to grab another shirt, stuff it in there until it fit through, and then get another. We'd stuff night over there. So every single night we just get up and go over there and do.
Shoot, lost you.
We did that.
I'm losing you.
You paused on me for a second.
Yeah, I lost you for a second. All right, so you were shoving in the mail slot, and I think we're good now.
Yeah, we just shove it in the mail slot every night until for about 3 weeks, and while they were filming the show, hoping that somebody would get one of those shirts and wear it on the TV show. And then it was interesting. The producer said, "Oh, no TapOut ever got in the show. We had to make sure no TapOut was in there because we were looking to get sponsors and we didn't have any, so we weren't paying for it." Yeah. But if you watch the show, you'll see lots of TapOut in there. It's because we were sliding it in there wherever Chuck was giving it to his fighters. Yeah. We were sliding it in the mail slot. Fighters had walked in with it. It was just all kinds of ways to slide it in there. And so at that Ultimate Fighter, I think it was in 2006, we were at that event at the Cox Center in Las Vegas at the UNLV. And I can remember the Stephan Bonnar fight, Stephan Bonnar and Forrest Griffin, which is still one of the greatest fights in history there in the UFC, ever in the UFC, was going. And I can tell him, hey, there's 10 million people watching this fight right now. And I didn't know this. We were sponsoring the event, and the UFC had given us the opportunity to trade clothes to actually be on the mat because we didn't have enough money to give them at the time. Yeah. And so we had traded them $3,000 worth of clothes, and they put our logo on the mat. Well, what I didn't know was they had put our logo on, this is brought to you by Budweiser. Yeah. Well, they were doing that for us.
They were the title sponsor.
By TapOut. Yeah. Yeah. And so that night, as the fights were going on, my website guy called me and said, "Hey, what the hell are you doing? Your website has crashed. You're getting 3,000 orders an hour. What's going on? Why don't you tell me what's going on?" Yeah. And I said, "Well, we're at an event and we're sponsoring it. And I guess it's live. I guess some sales are coming." He goes, "Not some sales, brother." He goes, you're doing 3,000 orders an hour.
Yeah, that's real.
Thousands of sales are coming through right now." Yeah. And so we walked out of there, and we didn't know this, but our life would never be the same again because as soon as we got home, I literally had to get into game mode. Our credit card companies were shutting us down. I had to obtain 2 leases for the 2 places next to us just to find room to figure out what was going on. Because
were you still operating in San Bernardino too?
Yeah, we were in a place called Grand Terrace, which is a small city outside of San Bernardino there.
Got it. Nice. And so, and I'm curious, before that hit, what was your 2005 revenue? Do you remember?
2005, you know, it's become such a blur over the years. I want to say it was like 3 million or somewhere around there, give or take.
Yeah. So you're a $3 million business, and then boom, you're doing, thousands of orders a day. Could be 30 to $50 average order. So you're making, $15,000 a day all of a sudden.
Yes.
And that's with a crash. If it wasn't crashed, it would have been more.
Well, what he said was, hey, look, we're going to have to just capture the credit cards right now, but we're not going to be able to process them. So I said, okay, that's good, because I didn't want to lose an order. Right. But what I didn't realize is at that time, we didn't have an inventory system in place.
Yeah.
So if it sold it, it just sold it. It's like, it didn't matter that we didn't have it in stock. It just sold it.
Yeah.
And we were going to have to enter every single credit card by hand. So, remember those old credit card machines with little buttons on top?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Every single one of them had to be entered by hand on those things. Yeah. And so we were just employing everybody we talked to. Like we'd go to a restaurant and be like, oh, this girl seems to be working good. Hey, do you want to come work for us? And we just hire them right out of the restaurant.
Good way to do it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so, and you sold right away, it sounds like, because in 2006, when you also ended up selling the company, or no?
No, we sold in 2010.
Oh, okay. So you built off of that for a while. Yeah. And so you expanded, you got the 2 places next to you, you were hiring every waiter and waitress that you liked and just bringing them in. So when did you feel like you caught up? How long did it take before you felt like you got the operation under you?
It was always like an out of control bull, that was that we were just trying to catch up with until 2008 happened. Then everything kind of slowed down.
Oh, it did. Okay. So you guys were affected by
but we were still huge at the time, and there's still commerce going on. Yeah. It just made us sit back and slow things down a little bit, because you didn't want to be stuck holding the hot potato at that point. Right. Too much inventory or too many employees or whatever. So we just had to like control that situation. But we fared fairly well that for the times. A lot of people having a lot worse time than we were. Yeah. But I mean, because the UFC was exploding still, it was just out of control. I mean, it was growing, and it was, the fighters, they had great fighters at the time. They were getting a lot of exposure at the time. And MMA shops were actually opening up all over the place. The UFC just started their own convention. It was just so much good stuff going on. It was hard to slow it down.
And wait, I'm curious, so do you remember your revenue in 2006? You went from 3 to what? I'm curious, that growth.
In 2006, 7. So about 7, we're doing 50 million or something. So
you went from 3 to whatever to 50.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Got it. Yeah. That's incredible growth. And a lot to keep up on.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. And, you can imagine what it's like dealing with that kind of growth. It was, you're just hiring everybody. You're hiring anybody who has any experience. We're hiring in-house attorneys. We're hiring, COOs and CFOs and, everybody in between, accountants that, it's like, okay, not just a CFO, but you have 3 accountants in between the CFO. Yeah. Controllers and stuff. So you just have all these different people in place. And it was just out of control. It was a good time though. I mean, we were also, the reality show was going on. We became the sponsors of the reality show. Yep. We became the sponsors of the UFC, the main and only clothing sponsors of the UFC. We had our own TV show. So they started doing our own show. So we had 3 seasons of our own show. We only ended up filming 2 because my partner ended up getting killed in 2009 by a drunk driver. All right. So up until that point, we were just, everything was going our way.
Got it. And so was that a big turning point for it? Was that with your loss of your partner, or what was kind of the deciding factor of like, we're going to explore selling this? Where did that come from?
Well, yeah, I mean, when my partner died, it was just kind of, I got a sour taste in my mouth for the business at that time. Mm-hmm. I just didn't want to be everything that I had done up until that point. We were talking every single day, bouncing these ideas off of each other. And it just didn't feel the same. It wasn't the same excitement that we had in the past. And so I just felt like that it was just a good time to look for somebody who could help come in and run the business so that it wasn't dependent on me being there all the time.
Yep.
And so when we sold the company to a New York based firm who bought it. And then we stayed on for another 5 years as president.
Got it. And how was that experience? Like, you build this thing for 15 years, bootstrap it, or 13 years, and bootstrap it and build it up. And then you now have a partner that you have to answer to that's some finance team. How was that experience? 5 years is a long time with a P backer.
It was not easy at all by any means. It was it kind of got to the point where you want the best for your company and you want to make good decisions for them, but you realize that they don't want the same things that you want. We spend money different. I was willing to spend it all. When we were doing it, I didn't care if I made money. It wasn't about that. It was like, of course I wanted to make money. No, but it was about making things happen. It was about a result more than it was about the money. And so it was all about that. Just whatever it takes, we need to make this happen. Yeah. And if that meant putting all of our money into it, then I'd borrow money to make it happen. Yeah. But with them, it was, they do an amazing job with other brands. I just feel like that there were some things they didn't understand about what our brand was going through and those, that growth that it was dealing with, and that we were in touch with our customers. We were more than just a t-shirt brand. We've always said that. We're
just froze.
A day, at least, a tattoo of somebody sending us, hey, look at this tattoo I just got tattooed on me. I love you guys. You guys are the best, man. You guys changed my life. Those are the letters we'd get from people. Yeah. So I think they just didn't quite understand the gravity of what we were doing.
Yeah. And that's typical on the finance side. So 2015 comes around. Was it a big celebration? Like 5 year? Was it a 5 year agreement, or did you just stick around for 5 years?
It was a 5 year agreement.
Cool. So when you were done, did you just I'm curious what happens after that. So that was 2015, right?
Right. That was 2015 when I left. Yes.
And did you go take a year vacation? Like what was what happened after that?
Yeah. We were kind of, so I met my wife. We started dating a little bit before, I think maybe 2013, right around there. And, so we were traveling around, because the UFC took me everywhere anyway. So I was all over the place. I was flying to Japan and China and Germany, and we were meeting with the troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, Afghanistan and Germany. And so we were just flying all over the place, doing different events for the UFC. And when I met my wife, I was taking her. I wanted her to come with us. So, during that time, we started kind of formulating different things that we wanted to do. So I was kind of like, part of my head was like, I wanted to start doing other things. I started to feel like, okay, I'm not going to ask for a re-up of my contract or try to, I didn't know what their intentions were, but I felt like that they had some things in place. I wasn't doing a lot for them. So I felt like I wanted to do more, but they wouldn't let me. So, they were great people and they very smart people and had done a lot with, they buying lots of brands. They're building a great company, but, it was just, they didn't want to do what I wanted to do. We definitely weren't on the same page as far as like how I wanted to infiltrate money into the brand to really build it and take it to the next level.
Yep. Got it. And so when you left, did you guys you and your wife have an idea of jump right into something? Cause it happens. I've seen entrepreneurs that have their big exit and like a week later they're on to the next company. So what happened right after you were out?
Yeah. Well, I had also started a company called Grip Knife and, met simultaneously with a guy that I had met, and we had patented this foregrip for an AR-15 that pulls out into a knife. And so we're a patented foregrip for an AR-15 as like a backup weapon for either law enforcement, military, or home defense.
Yeah.
And then me and my wife have been talking about doing a podcast. So we were like, hey, let's do this podcast. And we were really excited about doing it. And we were traveling all over the world at this time. She was doing a lot of photo shoots and stuff. And so we were going to Spain and Ibiza and Cannes and, just doing all kinds of cool things. And we were talking about having kids, and she couldn't have kids, or she felt like she couldn't have kids because she had been married before. She was coming out of a marriage and they couldn't have kids. So she was kind of, I have kids previously. And so we were kind of sad about that because we wanted to have kids. And we got pregnant. And so so we had a little boy, and that was pretty exciting for us. So it kind of put the podcast on hiatus for a second, but we decided to start another company called Billionaire Collectibles. And this was just born out of, we were both kind of collectors, and her mom used to own an antique shop. And I was a big collector of like Star Wars and different things that I was collecting. And I also collected these like historical documents, which are like documents from Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. And so what we started doing was getting these documents with one of their famous quotes, and we would marry them together in like a framed piece of art. And we would sell these. They're great for like entrepreneurs that are like want to be inspired by people of the past. Who inspires them? Who inspires you? Like, who inspires you? Like, who's somebody that inspires you? Like somebody from the past, like an entrepreneur, inventor.
You said it, Abraham Lincoln. I think that Tesla, Westinghouse.
Imagine holding a document. I have this beautiful document by Nikola Tesla or Lincoln. But this 1908 document by Tesla. Tesla documents are really hard to come by. And this one sells for like $50,000. But it just has his laboratory at the top. He's asking for some parts that he needs for his laboratory, and signed by him at the bottom. Just a beautiful document. That, imagine holding this document, knowing that Nikola Tesla had held this at one time in his life, and wrote his name on the bottom. It's kind of, especially like when even Lincoln, thinking about Lincoln, what was going through his head when he's writing this letter to his friend, or, writing a commission letter, that you're holding this document that he once held in his hand. So it's kind of a special moment for entrepreneurs, people, especially us as entrepreneurs. I think all of us as entrepreneurs we're a little more in touch with ourselves and in touch with our feelings and our thoughts and manifestations and quotes. And so I think it really means, it means a lot to me, and maybe not every entrepreneur gets it.
No, I agree. No, I definitely get it. That's awesome. I don't know. I like that better than just a random piece of art, even though art's great too. Like something that has true gravity and history, I think is awesome.
Yeah. That's how we.
And felt. You're still working on that, right? You're still building that.
Yeah, no, yeah. We sell to a bunch of people. We're mostly private. We have private relationships, networking relationships with people. We're not like, we don't sell a ton online. We sell mostly. It seems like we have an online presence, but most of our sales comes from just connections and networking and people who know us from past sales. A lot of return customers, a lot of our entrepreneurs that buy stuff. We have celebrities, a couple big celebrities, some sports stars, one team owner. Just a lot of really good people that have business. They're all entrepreneurs or businesses or sports stars, and they get something from it. From being that close to. That's the closest you'll ever get to Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, holding that document, and it does something for them. It gives you energy.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Motivation and energy. That thing's sitting on my wall in front of my desk, reminding me to get to work, because there's people that worked way harder than me before me.
Absolutely.
I like it. So last two questions for me. First, what's next? What do you think? Where are you going? Is it to focus on this? Is it to keep building your family? What do you think is coming next for you?
Yeah, I mean, me and my wife we're looking to do something, man. We're antsy. We have this, the Billionaire Collectibles. It's not like a scalable business, really. I mean, it kind of is, but it isn't.
Yeah.
We enjoy doing that. It's kind of a hobby that just started making money for us. Because we showed it to a couple people, and then we just started. They wanted to. Oh, we want one, and it's like anybody you show it to, they want one. So we showed it to a few people. They wanted some, so we started making them, and it just became kind of a hobby that we were flying all over the world picking up these different pieces.
I'm not going to make you blow you up on a podcast, but I'd love to know how you get all access to all these cool things.
Oh, it's just auctions and different places that we know have them. We just picked up an Ettore Bugatti piece.
Cool. Yeah.
And by the founder of Bugatti. Really cool piece that we got from Germany. Just like these places, these things are hard to find, but you find them all over the world.
Yep.
And so that was fun for us, but we feel like we want something that we can scale. And so we're looking to do something. I don't know if it's a course. I'm not sure what we're helping a lot of people with our podcast, which is an entrepreneur it's for entrepreneurs with kids. And so we interview different entrepreneurs in the world who have kids, and it's kind of a different. Do you have kids?
Not yet, but I'll be there soon. I was going to say I think I start to get ahead of the education.
Yeah, I mean, or thinking about having kids. We always say
I'm married, and we're going to have kids.
Right. So it's a different life. It's life changes, your focus changes a little bit, but you still want to make it and be successful. You want to all of a sudden you want to build this great family. You want to have great kids, and you want to have a great business. So dividing your time becomes a skill set, and and there's a struggle there too. So we try to help people work their way through that. And we have a club on Clubhouse too called Entrepreneurs with Kids. And in our podcast called the Pretty and Punk Podcast, Entrepreneurs with Kids. And so it's going to be something around that. We're not sure yet, but it's going to be something around that.
I like it. That's awesome. Well, if I can ever be helpful. And the last question, which speaking of helpful, what's one piece of advice you'd have for that person trying to achieve their dreams? Like, what's something that you don't think people hear? Everyone knows work hard, et cetera. But like, what's that one thing that you think really got you to where you are that most people wouldn't think of?
Well, I would say, the one thing I'd say is, I really truly believe in just envisioning your goals and thinking. I mean, sometimes it sounds so cliche to just think, manifesting or thinking about your goals, or really having a vision for what you want your life to look like. It sounds a little corny, but I'm telling you, everything that I ever envisioned for my life came true. And so I can't just shrug it off and say that it just happened, or that I made it happen that way, because I really didn't. Many times, I mean, I can remember saying that I wanted a girl who was like, spoke another language, or didn't live in this country, just kind of like something different than, because I just wanted kind of a different type of life. I came from this small city, and I just wanted a different type of life. And my wife is Hungarian, speaks fluent Hungarian. I wanted, I talked about how I was going to build this company and how I wanted to live across from the water. I live that's all I stare at is water all day long. So I'm right across from the water. Just everything that I'd ever envisioned for my life, building our company, being huge and successful, all those things I had thought about way before they happened. I can remember driving right up in front of me here on PCH, thinking about one day I want to, live by the beach, and who are all these people that live up in this hill? How are they able to afford this? How are they able to do this? What did they do? And having all those thoughts run through my head, and thinking one day if they can do it, I should be able to do it too.
Yeah. And I think it's that visualization, then you can start figuring out step by step, but you have to have a finish line identified. It's kind of the idea.
And don't quit. It's not about it's so easy. Everybody is going to come against huge problems and difficulties, and those things, they come with the territory as an entrepreneur. Sometimes it's the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. You'll have the hardest time you've ever had in your life. It's easy to go get a job. It's easy to go work 9 to 5 and do what people tell you to do. That's easy stuff to do. The hard thing is when you're dealing with the hardest time of your life and getting up every single day to take on the next day.
I mean, as you said, working 4 years without making a dime.
Oh,
dude,
like, I mean,
losing money.
I think of, there's a great story about Howard Carter, who worked for like 12 years looking for King Tut's tomb.
Yeah.
And not having any small wins. I mean, at least as entrepreneurs, we get little wins along the way. It's like, oh, I'm on the television show, or I just got on a podcast, or, this guy just bought $1,000 worth of product, or, or I just got in this store, whatever it is. You have these little wins all along the way. What would be so hard for me is to do something like that, where you're this guy who everybody's telling you you're crazy, that there's no more kings in the valley, and that whatever you're doing, there's already people who search the area that you're searching now.
Yep.
And you're there for 11 years trying to find proof. Yep. But he stuck to his guns, and he found the biggest treasure that's ever been found in the history of archaeology. Yeah. And I think that's exactly what it is sometimes with big risk comes big reward. With that much hardship becomes the biggest reward. It's like it almost equals out. If you're going to do an easy to do business and everything's, kind of a layup, and you're able to, scale that without problems, then, your reward's usually about equal to that. It's not that great. And for the person who goes through that big hardship, that person is gonna come into something great.
Agreed. Well, Dan, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on HawkeTalk.
Yeah, thanks for having me on there.
Of course.
You've been listening to the Hawke Media podcast. To ensure that you never miss an episode, make sure to subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.